the fact that the two countries are working very hard to reach an agreement is helping to keep both governments on their best behavior, because they don't want to upset the other side at a very sensitive period. So that's positive. But on the other hand, if we don't have if we have an agreement but it's not really a solid agreement, then we'll have implementation problems, and the goodwill that's been created will break down, and it might be even harder to start another type of trade negotiation in the future if this one isn't successful. So we need an agreement, but we also need a good agreement, and that's why the two governments face such a significant challenge during these negotiations.
And the distinction between the two, well understood, Tim. I got to ask you, though, you know, we were up in China just a couple of days ago, and the sense was on this whole enforcement issue, the two sides are just so far apart, and there's a sense that the American position is going to be really difficult for China to stomach. And obviously there's been pushback, and a lot of people, including former U.S. officials that I spoke to, were saying, look, maybe what might be a good workaround is if the enforcement, the snapback tariffs were to be reciprocal and not just one-sided. Is that a workable solution, do you think? And do you think that's what they're pursuing?
I do think that an enforcement mechanism will be more acceptable to the Chinese side if there is a symmetry to it. So presumably the United States is also going to be making certain commitments to China in the course of these negotiations. And as long as each side has the right to make good faith determinations of the execution and implementation by the other side, and has some sort of enforcement mechanism, presumably the number of changes that the Chinese side needs to make are much greater in practice. But as long as there's a basic symmetry in the structure of the enforcement, I think that makes it more palatable for the Chinese side.
Right. Mr. Stratford, how do you lay the timeline for negotiations to progress from here? That point that you made about an okay deal versus a good deal is very important, but how do you place that on the timeline, given that the markets would want a deal sooner rather than later?
Well, I hope that the markets are not short-sighted, because if we get a deal but it falls apart quickly, I think in some ways that would be worse than no deal at all, because we'd made an effort to get a deal, it didn't work, then what? So I think it's, as long as the two governments are making a very valiant effort, frankly, to reach an agreement, I think staying in the negotiation process is better than coming to an agreement too early and not really dealing with the key issues. You know, the way the governments are negotiating right now is really quite extraordinary. We haven't seen this intensive of an effort by the two governments to address trade issues for 2 decades. The closest that comes to it is 2 decades ago when China was negotiating to join the WTO. So we have something very important happening, and I think we need to let the negotiators have the space and time to really get the job done right.
Hi, I'm Emily Tan, and thanks for watching CNBC. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching.